Live. Hey, folks, I'm David Goldstein.
I am Brian Brinkman.
You're tuned in to episode 132 of the Beyond the Pond podcast. This is the podcast which, generally speaking, Brian and myself utilize the music of fish as a means of getting a listener to listen to other bands. They're usually not jam bands. Obviously, we've broken that a bit in the past 2 years. However, the reason we do this is a lot of people can tell you everything about their favorite band, Fish, dates, times, hemispheres, times, song lengths, where they were when certain things went down. But then you talk about other bands, you talk about Spiritualized, the Stone Roses, or Britpop, and they kind of look at you like you got two heads. We've been trying to combat that. And this is the year-end episode. Everyone's favorite episode.
This is the year-end episode. This is the episode that we came back 2 years ago, giving you guys an opportunity to continue to go beyond the pond with us as we explored our favorite albums of 2022. And we've been back ever since. This is probably our favorite episode of the year. This is the big picture episode. What did the year mean to us? What did we come away with it? What were our big takeaways? What were some of our favorite records? What were some of our favorite moments from the overall year? Really, really exciting episode to dive into. We've got so much to talk about today. It's middle of the afternoon, your lunch hour, my lunch hour. This is a time for people to sit down before the holidays, relax a little bit, and get themselves in the zone for listening projects back on what did I miss in 2024. We're going to be your guide today.
Yes, we are indeed doing that. An outline of this episode. This is our Music 2024 discussion forum. We're going to talk our top Fish, Goose, and Eggy shows of 2024. Top albums from 2014 and 2019. Where are they now? What albums pissed us off in 2024? What are some of our personal deep dives this year? Of course, what are our top albums of 2024? And on that note, I normally say, let's get to the fish, but let's talk about Brian quickly. Just tell me, what did kind of 2024 mean to you musically in a nutshell?
2024 has been kind of an extension for me of the last 3 or 4 years. I feel like this year we're well past the time period where the pandemic has sort of like a lingering impact on music at large. I feel like I'm in a really good rhythm where most of my year is spent in listening projects. Most of my year is spent kind of consuming music in a more like academic way, just like the best way that I can take it all in. I feel like I have a real grasp at this point in time of what music I absolutely love, what music is really going to move me on a regular basis, versus, dipping my toes into kind of areas that are necessarily new to me. I'm kind of looking to 2025 as a year to continue to branch out even further into styles of music that I may not necessarily be attuned to at this point in time. But like over the last couple of years, heartland rock, jazz, experimental music, modern country to a certain degree have all kind of become the type of music that I'm drawn to, as you will see in my overall list. So this year was less about like, oh man, I've never heard anything like this before, and more, oh man, there's that much more great stuff for me to listen to in this style of music or in these styles of music that I love. What about you?
Yeah, like as listeners know, my tastes aren't entirely dissimilar from yours. And kind of at this point in time, I can listen to the first minute and 30 seconds of one song and one record and tell you it's something I'm going to keep listening to after that. So, yeah, I mean, much like you, just kind of like an expansion of genres that I've already have been listening to, stuff I already have been enjoying. If there's anything I'm listening to more this year than prior, not really, but I think as you'll come to find, it was a very, very, very good year musically. It was plenty
Absolutely.
I absolutely enjoyed, and definitely I can see my top five certainly holding up as these years go on. Unlike kind of like 2014. I'll give you a preview of what's to come. So, yeah, I mean, I split the listening time between, Fish and the Grateful Dead, between trying my very best to listen to new bands and new music, obviously jam band concerts, and then podcasts. Definitely, I don't think I'm going to be listening to nearly as many political podcasts this year, next year as I did this year, unless we're all out hiding in like the bunker somewhere trying to listen to Pod Save America to tell us everything's going to be okay. But
I don't even think they can convince us of that at this point in time. It's
no,
you live and you learn. You had your people you'd go to be like, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry. There's a process. This all works. And then you kind of realize, you know what, man, the only person who's going to tell me that everything's going to be okay is Jeff Parker playing at ETA. That's it. That's really all that it is.
Yeah, as of recording, like Elon Musk wants to shut down the government, just like unelected Bond villain weirdo. Jesus,
it's all part of the mass democracy plan.
I should probably all part of it. Stop talking now, unless he wants to like destroy the non-existent Beyond the Pond account.
We don't broadcast on X. No.
Anyway.
Well, let's talk about an area that is very near and dear to our heart, and kind of the inception of this podcast came from. For those of you who are new to us, for those of you who've been around, you've heard this story if you're the latter. But Dave and I met outside of Fish's Wrigley Field shows in 2016, and I've always joked that I knew immediately we would be friends and good podcasters together, because neither one of us was afraid to say that night one of Wrigley Chicago 2016 was a bit of a dud. And I was like, man, I'm so stoked that there's a guy here who loves Fish as much as I do, who's able to speak openly and honestly about their feelings about this band, when they're great versus, when they're not great. And when we started talking in the winter of 2017 about what kind of podcast we wanted and how we would, organize this and whatnot, our conversations were all around, let's use the music of Fish to introduce people to other music. But the funny thing that happened is over the last 3 or 4 years, Dave and I both became big jam band fans again. And there are two very young jam bands that you've heard us talk about at length here, Goose and Eggy, as well as the continued greatness of Fish, that we want to celebrate those artists before we dive into our larger episode here in our larger countdown. All three bands had accomplished 2024s. They all had surprising moments that I don't think any of us expected going in. For Goose, they brought on a new band member, Cotter Ellis, on drums. For Fish, they played Sphere for the first time. They played their first festival in 9 years. And for Eggy, they did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. They released an album that they'd been working on for a long time, and they really started that leveling up process of playing big festivals, opening up for larger acts, all while playing some really exciting sets in the spring and the fall in particular. So starting with Fish, Dave, just give me a quick 2-3 sentence. What did you think of Fish 2024, and what were your 5 favorite shows of the year?
Fish 2024 is an embarrassment of riches. It's probably the strongest Fish year, in my opinion, since 2015, maybe even 2013. It's just, God, there was so much to listen to in 2024. They came out hot with Mexico, and they kind of never let up. So I was a very big fan of Fish in 2024. My 5 favorite shows, I guess in order, would be August 30th, 2024, which was Friday Night of Dicks, which just the second set is probably the best second set they played all year, nonstop. Flame Throwing Fire, Chalkdust Torture, Sand, Ruby Waves. Then we got August 9, 2024, which I think was the first night at Bethel Woods. Very well constructed second set, flowing first set, doesn't ever let up. Got July 30th, 2024 from St. Louis. That was the one with the 40-something minute tweezer, which gets very krautrocky, driving spacey. February 23rd, 2024, that was Mexico. That was a show with the Chalkdust Torture, which I think is probably my favorite jam that Fish played all year. And then July 21st, 2024, great 2-set show from earlier in the tour. That was a show from Great Woods. where they played a tweezer, which I call the Everyday People tweezer because it sounds a lot like to me a jam on the classic Sly Stone song. I don't know if that's what he had in mind, but it's what it sounds like to me. So
I have a few of those same on there. I mean, it's been such a great year of Fish, but I do think that there is kind of this consensus, a little bit of a higher tier of shows that were played where everything kind of came together. The really cool thing about this year is I saw 8 shows, and in all of those shows there were highlights, even in a couple of them that were a little bit more scattered than in other shows. I certainly couldn't say that in 2022. In 2023, getting night 4 of Dick's, kind of brought things down a level. This year was every show I saw. 90% of the shows I listened to, I was like, man, I will go back and I will listen to large percentages of the show. So for me, 223 Cancun, just a notch below or just a notch above 222 the night before. This one just kind of had the magic from the start, Set Your Soul Free into Ghost to open things up. Really great Kill Devil Falls in set 1. I got my first Fast Enough for You, I think, since Coventry. And the aforementioned Chalk Dust Torture. One night after seeing my first 30-minute jam since Coventry, I get a 39-minute long Chalk Dust that just blows the mind in terms of how they locked in Fishman, Trey back and forth, just thudding the drums. That riff that Trey plays is unbelievable. 421, Last Night of the Sphere. This has a really great Down Disease. This has a really great Light. This has a really classic set 1, great Ghost. I believe this was the show that opened with Plasma.
Yeah.
It just kind of like, Sphere was this visual, brilliant moment. Musically, I think the music's at times took a little bit of a back seat to the visuals and to the overall experience of the run. But this show felt the most complete to me and had the biggest highlights, and the fact that you get a 35-minute Disease and then a huge Light later in the set just showed kind of where they're feeling at that point in time. 7:30 St. Louis. Typically don't like to say a lot of nice things about St. Louis, but Fish tends to play really well in St. Louis. The 2019 run we really enjoyed.
That's
This one was great. It is, right? It's a strange thing. But this show is great. Yeah, the 40-minute tweezer that you talked about, a lot of varied ideas, a lot of exploration. First ever jammed out ETH Reg. Who knew that was going to be a jam vehicle? I then saw a jammed out version at Dick's. Really strange stuff. Next for me, night 1 of Mondegreen. This, you've played a great Mexico run, you've played the Sphere, you've had this great summer tour, you show up at your festival, it's beautiful, just hot, steamy August night in Delaware, and you throw down a show that has a MoMA jam to start things off, has a huge Wolfman's Brother in set 1. And then in set 2, you've got the first 20 plus minute, What's Going Through Your Mind, a Chalk Dust Torture, a Light, a really good Caspian, a big Everything's Right. Like, just felt like, oh wow, we have arrived here. We are at Mondegreen. This is leveling up in a big sense. And then finally, you mentioned this as well. 8:30 at Dick's. The Chalk Dust, Sand, Ruby Waves is up there with the best hours of Fish I've ever seen. I mean,
yeah,
come on. All right, let's talk Goose. Goose had a challenge 2023, I think we would say. They parted ways with their founding drummer Ben Atkin for a variety of reasons. It seemed the main one was based in creative opposition, creative tension. They hired Cotter Ellis. They played a 4-night run at the Cap. Very well received, great jamming, awesome jamming throughout June. I got to see a couple shows. Things got a little bit more vanilla as we got into October and September. A little bit better in November. I'm curious, where are you at the end of 2024 with Goose, and what were your favorite shows that they played this year?
It's funny thing to note about Goose is when Cotter first joined the band, he was like LL Bean Bro, kind of with the bearded, some cool tattoos, kind of with the knit cap. And as the year went on, he kind of unleashed more of like the inner rock star, trying to like do open shirt kimonos and earrings and wearing the sunglasses indoors. And I thought the performance was kind of, as Cotter's outfits got more garish, Goose actually played more conservatively. I
I
don't know if
know.
there's, I don't
I know.
know if there's anything to do that, but I kind of liked him better back when he was the LB model. Um, I still no, Goose is a good band. They're very good, very professional. You kind of know what you're going to get at this point, and that no matter how much they would tell you otherwise, the band still revolves around the axis that is Rick. You know, they're capable of having some. Ooh, looks like my camera just got unplugged.
I'll hop in while you're getting your camera fixed here because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. They're a they're a great band. From an arena standpoint, it seems like there's a trajectory of where they're going. Their sound fills a room in a really impressive
There
way.
we go.
Their jams are uh, their jams are really celebratory and really accessible in this sort of like mass jam cultural standpoint. But I agree with you. As the year went along, things got a little bit more conservative. It feels like
It's
that's
like
kind of
with
where your head's
Goose, you
at.
will have fun, no question about it. You go to a show. I like seeing them 2 or 3 times a year. You watch webcasts, you will definitely have a good time. It's just not quite as adventurous as I thought it was going to be based on some of the shows in the springtime. So that said, the ones I really enjoyed were, let's see, April 7, 2024. That was actually the first show at the Capitol Theater, their first full show with Cotter as a member of the band. And they played a 35-minute version of Drive that I think is still the best Goose jam they played all year, despite happening in the first set of the first show. And I thought 2024 is going to be amazing. But that was kind of the peak. A little weird, but all right. Good show. I like June 8th, 2024 from Fiddler's Green. I had an amazing Modivine. O'Brien was at that show. And I liked November 8th, 2024, because the first like 50 or so minutes of the second set are phenomenal. Really excellent version of their song Thatch. The Old Man's Boat, which doesn't usually excite, but it had a really cool jam. And then the cover of that song Fish in the Sea. But I also enjoyed that show for a different reason, is I got to watch on the couch with my dad, as my mom was in the hospital and they're doing a procedure. She's doing very well. Probably going to go visit her at home this coming weekend. My dad didn't want to be alone, so I got to watch some Goose with him. And he said, I can see why you like these guys. They don't always connect, but they connect enough. And during that, she's like, wow, just when you think they're going to end it, they keep going. You're going to end it? And they keep going. Like, yeah. Dad's like pretty sage with the jam band thing. But Goose, for some reason, plays really good shows in Cincinnati. They're like a Cincinnati, Covington, Kentucky band. That's kind of what they became, despite being these dorks from Southern Connecticut. So all three of the Cincinnati shows are pretty good.
Yeah, that is on my list. I think that you're absolutely right. That was a killer show. That was the only show I believe I webcasted post summer tour. We got a comment here from Mike Walsh that they need a lot more group jamming. It's all guitar solos over vamping. I think that for the longest time I would have said this is part of the process, but it's kind of now the style. And I think to Dave's point, it's where I'm losing faith is too extreme of a word, but it's where I'm losing interest. It's where I'm finding myself just being like, okay, can we do something more? Where I enjoyed them this year is similar to you, 4-7 and 4-10 at the Cap. Night one has that great drive that you mentioned. That was kind of the first big, oh my God, like this new drummer Cotter is really injecting some democratic jamming into this band. Really, really cool stuff. Later in the show, there was a great version of Pancakes that was similar to the drive. 4-10, you've got the Vampire Weekend sit-in. Great week in Vampire Weekend history. They play the Eclipse show. They play with Goose. We get a 33-minute Cape Cod. We get Gen X Cops. Plus, we get some huge heavy hitters from Goose. A great version of Tumble. Great Arrow as well. Just a really great all-around show to end this really celebratory 4-night run that they played. 6-8 at Fiddler's, 30-minute drive in set 1, 34-minute Madhavan in set 2. I could not complain even if I tried. They opened up with Turn Clouds and I still couldn't complain. It was pretty amazing stuff. And then 921 from Carnation. We get a sneaky 4-song second set, really great Hunger Sight, really great Redbird. Just the kind of stuff I was really looking for from Goose this year. Similar to, I don't have it on this list, but the SPAC Drive had a very similar vibe to that Redbird, and to like the Drive from the Cap, where they got into a really cool riff. They played really connected. They got into this really cool groove space. And it's exactly what I'm looking for from this band. So I'm really hoping, man, that 2025 brings on a little bit more weirdness from our Goose dudes.
Like,
I don't know if it's there. I don't know if it's there.
Of it. Like, they played a version of Rockdale on June 30th in New Haven, Connecticut. I was at that show. That's got like some Fish, like Fall 94 vibes, like totally interesting, different, all sorts of strange, interesting effects, not really caring if the audience is into it or not. And it was great. People loved this. And holy shit, let's get some more of that. And there wasn't.
Yeah, you had there's a really great Wisteria Lane from 626 in Portland, Maine, Madhavan from 9-1 in, I believe that was in PNC in Homedale, New Jersey, 927 Dripfield. Like, there were some great jams that we shared appreciation for, but I think we're both on the same path. One band that shocked us and that kind of blew our heads apart, and it feels like we're still in a small corner of the universe here. And this needs to change, because if you're coming to Beyond the Pond, you're coming because of the idea of expansion within music. And there is a young jam band who is expanding on a show to show and jam to jam basis. I've heard the critiques. I don't like them. I don't agree with them. I think that if we're looking for a moment, or for a jam band that appreciates kind of the moments of, we could go this way and lead to a peak, or we could go this way down a really weird road. This band exemplifies that in a way that Fish did, and their youth as well, and in a way I really look for music, and that is Eggy. Dave, I could just pull up our text thread and read the gushing that we do on a day-to-day basis when we listen to this band. But tell me your thoughts on Eggy at the end of 2024, and what a couple of your favorite shows were.
Eggy's a great band. They improvise at a very high level. I think that the audience is only going to continue to grow as they do so. Still a very democratic style of jamming. That's the word that we keep coming back to with Eggy, is that it's 4 individuals, all of whom chip in to contribute to the whole. Certainly the guitarist Jake Brown seems to become, more of the man over the past 2 years, which you kind of have to do when you happen to be in a jam band. They were kind of the only jam band where at one point I would have wished for having some more guitar, but he's definitely filled in the blanks quite admirably over the last 2 years. And I think as judging from the increasing size of the audience and the venues they're playing, and kind of in 2025 they're doing their first big boy tour. So I think they're headlining in Portland. What's the theater in Portland, Maine called?
State Theater.
Yeah, right. The State Theater. They're headlining the State Theater. I know in New York City, instead of Brooklyn Bowl, they're headlining Webster Hall, which I think holds pretty close to like 1,000 people. So yeah, they're got to take these bigger swings, and that's what they appear to be doing with regards to size of their venues. Yes, our good buddy Justin Bruce popping in to say Eggy rules and had a great 2024. Viva la Eggy. Check out Justin's excellent Eggy podcast, Vice or Virtue. So my 3 favorite shows, I put 3 from this year, would be May 4th, 2024, from a venue in Fairfield, Connecticut. I forget what it's called. It's right by the Fairfield train station. You can literally take the train to Fairfield and hop out, and you're right at the venue. Kind of like a hometown show because they're all from Woodbridge, Connecticut, which is about like 30 minutes away. That show highlights abound. Probably the best thing to do is in the second set. There are two original songs, "You" into "Atomic Age," both of which are just volcanic, fascinating jamming. Lots of reliance on the Chase Bliss mood pedal. Just excellent display. Got it. All right. So that was a phenomenal. You can say hello. That's my wife. All right. So yeah, May 4th, 2024, big, great hometown show where they rose to the occasion. Then I've got October 31st, 2024, the Halloween show, which was in Atlanta, I think, this year.
Yeah.
All right. Terminal West in Atlanta, Georgia. This is Eggy has a gift in that they're actually funny, and they're very good at letting the audience in on their own like inside jokes, and they're very good at stage banter, and they're very laid back. And the gimmicks that they use for the Halloween show, which was, I believe it was kind of like a wheel of chance, wheel of fortune type thing, where kind of what spun on the wheel would dictate their jamming style or dictate how they would be played. So you get these like big 30-minute versions of their best songs with kind of like fun games interlaced, and it's fun to listen to. They even like released it on YouTube, so you can watch the whole thing in full, and it makes a lot more sense when they do it that way. But that was Halloween done right in terms of inside jokes and in terms of really excellent jamming. There's a version of the Crosby, Stills and Nash song Southern Cross, that show, which is funny and amazing. And then the third, which I'm thinking might be the best show they played in 2024, was March 22nd, 2024, from Ardmore Music Hall in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Mainline Philly, right around the corner from the Tired Hands Brewery. That's just a fucking phenomenal show. Probably the best ever version of their song Backyard Bear. Great version of Finding and Losing. Just everything that you want from an Eggy can be found in that show. But overall, excellent year. Curious to see where their crowds grow, but I'm encouraged by the fact that they want to level up venue-wise.
Same page with you on a lot of this. I think that this year they had a really great spring, stretched all the way into May. They made a move to play a few more festivals, a few more opening gigs throughout the summer. Drew back for people like us a little bit of the jamming, a little bit about the music to bite into. I had a chance to talk to them in October just about kind of the experience of rethinking their show structure and rethinking how to present themselves to audiences in that sort of setting, and with time constraints. They got to play Red Rocks for the first time, for example, on July 4th. And then they came back in the fall and they did this really interesting thing where they kind of rethought how they present their overall show. And rather than come out and do a 2-set show the way that they always just had been, the expectation was there, they stretched their shows into a single set and really kind of worked in some fascinating peaks and valleys and interesting flow, and allowed themselves certain shows where they just allowed themselves to just let the music kind of dictate where they would go. And it's an interesting place. I'm curious to see where they go from a show structure standpoint going into 2025. The kind of established structure for jam bands tends to be that 2-set approach, but seeing 2 shows in the fall tour that were about 2 hours in length, with a nice meaty encore, really kind of won me over in terms of the single set approach. So for me, my favorite shows, 314 from Nectar's in Burlington. This had some huge jams. We got a massive 26-minute Kiss from a Rose. Yes, that Kiss from a Rose. We got a big old Ruben and Charisse. We got a big Sweat Equity, and we got a huge Here and Now, which was one of my favorite jams of 2024 from the jump. Just a really magical show, playing in kind of hallowed room as they're moving up through, the ranks, playing in a city that birthed Fish, and the venue that birthed Fish, and really kind of showing, an appreciation for time and place there. 322 Ardmore, just like you had, this was the night before Purim. This was a show preceded by a live interview with our good friend RJB, who asked some great questions of the band. The Backyard Bear that you mentioned, the Finding and Losing, really great set listing overall. Just really, really dug this show. Not to be too attendance biased, but I saw 412 in Boulder, got a 4-song second set. 33-minute boom and bust to close things out. Huge Time Escaping. Got an excellent kind of fluid set one. It was just a great, great show. Packed room. Really cool to see them. The first time I'd seen them, they opened up for Twiddle in March of 2023. And there were a lot of, curious people there and interested in what was going on. And it was
Classic
clear there were a
Sugar
lot of
Snake
people.
show.
The Sugar Steak show. You see the
Sugar
opener,
steak.
you go and you get a nice steak when Twiddle takes the stage. But seeing them a year later in Boulder, and seeing them after I'd listened to so much of 2023 Eggy and really felt like they were taking a step forward as a band, it was very cool to see it live. And then in the fall, the aforementioned single set shows here, they played a show in Des Moines, Iowa, that on October 22nd, that was fantastic.
Eggy owns Iowa. We said that if that Ann Seltzer poll was real, we'd have gone to Iowa to see Eggy. But
I was going to say this, they might have been so good that this is what tilted the Seltzer poll. Who knows? But really, really great show here. Really great single set. I think that they posted after the show that they had a set list pre-written and they just kind of abandoned it based on where the music was taking them, and that it was a really magical show for them. So definitely encourage you to seek that out. And then, like you mentioned, the 1031 show from Atlanta. These guys are funny. They love jamming. They love getting weird. If you have not sunk your teeth into Eggy, as you mentioned, Justin Bruce's Vice or Virtue podcast is a great starting point. Just great overview of both current jams and shows and runs, as well as starting to dip his toes into the historical aspects of this band. Great interviews with band members. Just a great way to kind of like dive in. Justin does a great job of threading musical selections in throughout, so you can kind of hear what the audio or what the hosts are talking about, and you can get a sense of where things are going with this band and if it's for you. So I would definitely recommend that. I also have a massive best of Eggy Jam of the Year list, so find me somewhere in the world and I'll send that your way. Let's shift gears here and get into our music for 2024. One of the things that defines our friendship is not just the fact that we like music, but that we like consuming a lot of music and a lot of different music and talking about that music. And that is what the rest of this episode is. This is like if the characters in High Fidelity never actually had to sell a record, this is what it would be. Just us sitting around a record store, just talking for hours on end. We're going to share a lot of music here for you guys. I'm going to try to post as much for the live viewers here. And for those of you who are watching months, years down the road, if you're like, what happened in 2024? This podcast may give us some insight. I'm going to try to post as many of these albums visually for you all to see, for those note takers out there, so you can take some notes. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through our top 15 in detail, but a little bit more expansionary beyond that. We're going to look back 5 and 10 years from now. We're just going to give a huge overview of where we are at as music fans here at the end of 2024. Dave, why don't you kick us off here? Give me just quickly your 20 through 16, say a little bit about each, and then I'll hop in with a couple of mine.
Okay, 20 through 16. At 20, I had Basic. This is Basic. Basic being our good buddy Chris Forsythe's latest project. Quite excellent, very cool, minimalist, almost 80s sounding instrumentals. Definitely recommend that. Number 19, Jack White. No Name. Strongest Jack White solo record since he was with the White Stripes. Comes out of the chute hard. Doesn't let up. I'm psyched to see him in February. 18, Chime School. The boy who ran the Paisley Hotel. Chime School is an accurate name. This is a San Francisco band that's very jangly. They're American. They kind of sound British. If you enjoy stuff on Slumberland, if you enjoy bright, shimmering music like I do, you'll enjoy that record. 17, Muriel Grossman, Devotion. Well, something I listened to all year, just incredibly soulful, saxophone-based jazz, kind of brought to mind a lot of the stuff from CTI I listened to from the early 1970s. But music, this was just good enough that it went all the way down to 17. Number 16, The Smile, Cutouts. They actually put out 2 records this year, Wall of Eyes and Cutouts. I enjoyed Cutouts more because that's the one to me that sounds kind of like the one where they just kind of forget Radiohead comparisons and cut loose and do some serious grooves. Some of the grooving on that record is like, I want to say John Fishman on December 2nd, 1997 in Philadelphia, Yamar, that type of like forces your whole body to move. So that's what I got through 20 through 16.
There's some great stuff. There's some stuff there that's on my overall list as well. I'm going to share my 30 through 16 because I just have to upstage you just a little bit here.
You're allowed.
I have everything ranked to 50 and then just like a huge, big old list of honorable mentions here.
Let me just tell the audience here that I'm on Brian's list for his like Apple Notes. Every time he updates something new with these lists, and it's quite often, my phone will beep. So it'll be like 2:00 in the morning. I'm asleep and I hear my phone beep, and I figured like there's gonna make a hurricane or something. Oh no, it's just Brian updating his list. It's like I could turn my notifications off, but that would be a disservice to the man. So I keep, if he wants to wake me up at 3 a.m, that's fine. I'm sure it's important. But
I appreciate the fact that you still have it set to a ping. After all of these years, it's not even just a vibrate at this point in time.
Oh no,
it's impressive.
It's totally, it is very much a vibrate, but I can still feel the vibrate on my nightstand.
You can feel it. I love it. Oh man. And that is me just like thinking deep in the moment here of, what do I need to do to further communicate, where I'm at from an artistic standpoint. It's critical stuff here. All right. I'm just trying to get my stuff in list form because we have a 200 character limit for the, this is like old Twitter. We have a 200 character limit for the amount of albums that we can share. So I'm going to go through it right now here. So 30 through 16, quickly. The War on Drugs, Live Drugs again. I mean, come on. This is the War on Drugs, live drugs. Another one, Harmonious Dreams on this. That's all you need to know. 29, Beak's 4th album. I got sent this from a good friend of the pod, Dallas Way. Really kind of blew me away. Gave me really, really heavy, like Wand Radiohead type vibes I loved. 28, Dave Harrington's Skull Dreams, as well as the Dave Harrington, Max Jaffe, and Patrick Shiroshi Zabulian live release. Both of those really hit me hard throughout 2024. 27, Waxahachie's Tiger's Blood. Her follow-up to St. Cloud was just a beautiful Midwestern Heartland rock record. I was super into it. Similarly, 26, Itasca's Imitation of War. Joni Mitchell types vibes, really gorgeous guitars, haunted lyrics. Really dug this album. 25, Tyshawn Sorey's The Susceptible Now. I remember putting this on and thinking I'd listen to 3 or 4 songs, and I checked to see kind of song titles and where we were at in the record. And I was still 3/4 of the way through the first track on the album. And I was like, this is going to be me. This is going to be something I'm going to listen to all year long, like 11 o'clock and later at night. 24, SML, Small, Medium, Large, where krautrock and jazz meet. Very, very here for it. 23, Wild Pink's Dulling the Horns. I think that this is the best Wild Pink album since 2018. 2018's Yoke and the Fur, I believe, is what that was called.
It's definitely the most lively Wild Pink album. It's the most War on Drugsy Wild Pink album. I mean,
Warren
Wild
Drugsy,
Pink. Yeah.
Tunnel of Lovey. I mean, this is just like, this is right in the 80s zone that I'm looking for.
It's got some oomph. I definitely liked it more than his last record.
I'm the exact same. I had gotten to a point where I was like, I was going to listen to everything he put out, but I was wondering if it was really for me anymore. He's actually, Wild Pink's opening up for MJ Lenderman here in Denver and in Boulder at the end of February. Tickets sold out immediately, and they are now like $200 on the secondary market. So I'm down with what you guys are getting, and we're going to talk about Mr. Lenderman later in this episode, but I'm really hoping I can get to those shows. 22, Anabutris, Mighty Vertebrae. They were on pretty much every album that I loved throughout 2024. Basis for Jeff Parker's quartet, excuse me. Just amazing grooves. This record, it's in the vein of jazz. It's in the vein of experimental music. It doesn't really sound like anything I've heard before. If you're interested in anything that we talk about in the show, you will dig this record, is all I can say.
Great fucking album. They're also the bass player for Jason Isbell now.
Yes.
Right.
Get paid. Get paid. That is
Get
a
that money.
great big gig to have. 21, Travis Reuter featuring Tyshawn Sorey, Peter Schlom, Mark Shim, and Harish Raghavan. Quintet music. This was right in my zone. Again, like the 10 to 11 o'clock at night, what I want to listen to while I'm reading, it typically is going to fall in the jazz world. This is the type of stuff that you'll get randomly on like a Saturday night, deep in the night text from Josh Carver, because he's got older kids, and so he's just like, he's up, he doesn't have to get up early the next morning, he can just hang out and listen to jazz, and he'll send us a text, and I'll be like, all right, I'm listening to this in the morning, and then I will listen to it, and I'm like, oh my god, this blew my mind. Number 20, Zachary Cale's Next Year's Ghost. This follows up, he put out a record in 2022 that I was okay on, but this was there with False Spring, his 2020 record, as two of my favorite albums this guy's ever made. It's a little bit more piano driven, Daniel Lanois inspired, just beautiful stuff. 19, Jeff Parker's ETA for the Way Out of Easy Live. This was recorded on January 2nd, 2023. It is on Bandcamp. It is available for purchase. If you have not heard it, if you've heard anything from Jeff Parker that you have enjoyed, I would encourage you to go out and just spend the $20 on this. It's going to a good spot. Jeff Parker's making some of the most exciting music around right now, and this just captures an incredible gig in just really great sound quality. And it's something I have it on CD. I'm going to be playing it in my car all winter and summer. And then rounding out my top 30 through 16, 18, Bill Callahan's Resuscitate. This is his live release that really showcases how experimental and how wild this dude's songwriting is when it goes in the live setting. Good Looks lived here for a while. I think with like 4 or 5 additional listens, this bounces up into my top 10. This is one of my favorite grower records of the year. We are going to hear a little bit more from it in this episode, so I won't say much, but I will just say like hooky madness. I love this record. And then number 16, Fish put out an incredible live box set back in March. The Spectrum 97, two of my favorite shows from fall 97 in great soundboard quality. Cannot argue with that at all. Let's dive in here a little bit more detail. Dave, tell me your 15 through 11.
For 15, I've got Mary Halverson Cloudward, which came out in January, I think. It was one of the first albums to come out, the first interesting album to come out in 2024. You know, she's known for being a phenomenal jazz guitarist, but this record actually is even more about the vibraphone, and her 3-piece horn section is even more prominent. So she kind of really fantastic band leader, composer. Then out of nowhere, she'll drop like a brain melting fuzz solo that reminds you, oh yeah, she's quite a really good guitar player. These songs have ebb and flow. Something really cool happens to every song if you wait long enough. So it's one of my favorite, like grocery shopping, walking down the block, Sunday morning records. So number 14, the band called Thus Love. The album is called All Pleasure. This is the second Thus Love album, a little bit of a change in the lineup. So they're basically like a kick-ass indie glam rock band from Brattleboro, Vermont. The first album was very post-punk, almost like Echo and the Bunnymen. But this one, they've kind of dialed that back a bit. And it feels like a band I'd listened to, seeing like 120 Minutes in 1992 in like high school, and just fall in love with them. I mean, I would have liked this band at age 15. I still do here. You get a lot of David Bowie, a lot of Mark Bolan looming large. They have a lot of swagger. That's a really good rock record. Number 13, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, Flight B741. This is basically Gizzard doing 70s cocaine rock with what sounds like purposely crappy amplifiers. Sign me up. I mean, maybe not as much depth as the trio of records they put out in 2022. This is just very fun summertime giz. They played like 3 or 4 of these songs virtually every night on their seemingly never-ending tour schedule. They expand on stage as giz songs tend to do. Just, super fun record. Number 12, I have a band called Gift. Not The Gift, Gift, all caps. Second album called Illuminator. This is like a lot of things I enjoy, being propulsive space rock. You got your shoegaze, you got krautrock, there's prog, even a bit of like some Manchester melded into there. All things that I enjoy, executed very well, and they get a lot of mileage out of like shimmer, like reverb. It's like reverb at boost up an octave, so you hear this like big shimmering effect. Heck of a lot of that. I recently learned from Pedal YouTube that this was actually deployed for the first time on the Unforgettable Fire, which I didn't realize, but kind of makes sense. Listen to this record. I didn't realize that. Listen to this record and that record. But yeah, if you like shimmery, driving, kraut, shoegaze, prog, Gift, Illuminator. Hopefully you do want to see them live before too long. Last time they played here, I was out to dinner with friends, so I could not go. And my number 11, I kind of cheated a bit. It's 3 records. It's the trio of albums that came out on the International Anthem label, which Brian already talked about, being the record from the Jeff Parker Quartet, The Way Out Easy, Anna Buttress's album, and the album by self-titled from was SML, Small, Medium, Large. All the albums, they all share members. They're each awesome in their own way. A banner year for the label. Unifying factor is Anna Buttress, who plays bass in all 3 of these albums. She's they're as comfortable and upright as they are playing electric bass. Like I said before, also Jason Isbell's touring bass player, but the SML album gets so funky. Like you're walking down the street saying, how can anything possibly be this funky? My God, it's almost like classic Medeski, Martin, and Wood in some ways. It's like a different lineup with that level of just like in the pocket where you can't imagine how they get that much in the pocket. So that's my 11. Those 3 albums felt of a piece to me, so I put them together.
I guess I'm my only regret now is that I didn't combine all of these 3 into one, because then there's 3 additional albums I could have thrown, or 2 additional albums I could have thrown in my top 50. So
I kind of broke the game, didn't I? Yeah,
you did in the right way, because I'm going to have a combo of 2 albums in one. I think. And this is kind of like a philosophical decision I made a couple of years ago, as I was finding a lot of these jazz artists that we listen to tend to release multiple albums a year. King Gizzard's usually the same way, where you get 2 or 3 records a year. Why would I have them scattered throughout the list when like it's all a complete statement, if you will? And I think that you're absolutely right on the International Anthem side. Great list. A lot of stuff on there that I loved as well this year. Couple that we'll be talking about, or one that in particular I'll be talking about a little bit later. So my number 15, Julian Lage. Speak to me. This is the late 90s jam adjacent vibes. Think like the Slip, Medeski, Martin and Wood, Berkfest. I still have like a sweet spot for this. This hit the nerve for me between jazz, jammy, anything is possible. Holy shit, I cannot believe that the guitar sounds like this. Every song kind of sounds slightly different. Dave messaged jokingly a couple weeks ago that, it's 1999. I'm cooking dinner for a sweet lady. This is the record I'm going to put on. You're absolutely right. It's got that vibe.
Yeah.
This is I'm throwing on my patchouli, putting on my nice.
Trying to sound sophisticated.
trying to sound sophisticated, but like I couldn't help that every time I threw this on, I was just like, man, I can't believe you got your guitar to sound like this. Just fascinating stuff. Of note, he sat in with Goose on Western Sun in Chicago back in September, and it was a really interesting. Hey, look at where Goose could go with their jamming if they really wanted to push themselves a little bit and get into kind of that weird space. So I was into that.
If they kidnapped Julian Lage, that's what they could sound like.
That's
And force him to sit in.
Yeah. Probably say as much as Rick, all right, 14, Jessica Pratt's Here in the Pitch. This record does more with 27 minutes than most records do with twice that length. I was super into this album, very haunting, kind of nostalgia, reverb, drenched in like Phil Spector 1960s folk rock. I was blown away by this record. It just put me in a time and place, and based on the runtime, it was kind of one of those albums that if I didn't know what to listen to and I was like making dinner or I was driving to pick up the kids, like it was the type of thing that I could just throw on, know that it was there, know that it was the vibe that I always wanted, and wouldn't take up too much of my time, which is, a really important thing. 13, Rosalie's Bite Down. This is Philly's finest lady in rock. She crafts another brilliant LP. I loved her last album, No Medium. This kind of crystallizes everything that she's been working towards. Very Ditch Trilogy vibes, but her voice is just clear as an absolute bell. Really love the contradiction between her voice and the way that a lot of her music sounds. It's just very rough and angular, and then you just get this beautiful alto kind of singing through. I'm really into her, really into the music that she makes. I think David Nance, his band was the backing band for this album. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Another great one. Number 12, Rich Ruth, Water Still Flows. This is a Nashville-based ambient explorer, which if you look him up on Bandcamp, he is classified as ambient explorer, which is like, if you could, I kind of want a hat that just says ambient explorer on it. Like that is my label right there. I was introduced to him
as opposed to the ambience you don't explore.
Right. Stationary ambience.
Yeah, stationary ambient. That's a new genre. It's just you press one note, boom.
I want to be the Lewis and Clark of ambient music.
Right.
So I was introduced to Rich by a good friend of the pod, Brian Weaver. Rich was a line cook at Redheaded Stranger, one of the best restaurants in America back in recent years. His 2022 LP, I Survived, It's Over, made my honorable mentions that year. But this record just blew me away immediately and kept delivering. This was just a gigantic level up from a gear sonic standpoint. There's just like worlds within worlds being created here. Really diverse, fully created songs, huge gem potential within these. Really, really just outstanding stuff. I can't recommend this album enough. Rich Ruth's Water Still Flows.
Yeah, it's a cool record. You could tell from the first song that he spent a lot more money at Sweetwater relative to the last record.
You're right. The big upgrade. And then my number 11 is both releases from The Smile, Wall of Eyes, and Cutouts. Fans of this pod will know that there was some deep-seated skepticism around these parts, around The Smile, when the original Smile album came out back in 2022. My immediate thought when they debuted was, cool, can we just have Radiohead back? That would be nice. But with Wall of Eyes and Cutouts, I've not only accepted that this is the probable future for the two creative geniuses in Radiohead, it's also a genuinely great second act, and I really can't wait to see where this goes. This is, you mentioned this in your chat about them. This feels like Radiohead adjacent, but also we don't necessarily need Radiohead anymore as artistic, from an artistic standpoint. While I would love another Radiohead record, if this is where Tom and Johnny are at, and this is what we're going to get from them going forward, I'm all here for it. I had both of these records on repeat all year, and when Cutouts was released, and it really just like reminded me of the things I loved about the King of Limbs, especially the back half of that album, I was all on board. So great stuff there. That is our 15 through 11. We still each have 10 albums left to go, but we are going to go to a segment here within the list, because you can't just go all the way through here. You can't just be listing records. We got to talk quickly about kind of where we're at this point in time and ebb and flow within this overall pod. So we're going to do a segment that we introduced 2 years ago that is really, really fun for me. This is looking back 10 years, our top 5 albums from 2014, and where are they now for us? So Dave, give me your top 5 albums from 2014 and tell me, are you still listening to these? Are you still attached to these? Where's your head at with these records?
Okay. My number 5 is New Pornographers, Brill Bruisers. Great album. Number 4, Lucero, Live from Atlanta. Also great album. The definitive Lucero album. Number 3, Sturgill Simpson, Meta Modern Sounds and Country Music. Only maybe the best country album that come out in the past 15 years. Number 2, Real Estate, Atlas. Probably the best real estate album. Number 1, War on Drugs, Lost in a Dream. Do I still listen to all these records? Yes, because they are all still all awesome. I probably don't listen to Real Estate's Atlas quite as much as the others, but I put on Meta Modern Sounds and vinyl last week. I listened to War and these are all great records. I listen to Lost in the Dream often. The Lucero record, when I want my dosage of kind of like Southern Redneck Springsteen, I put that on. And Brill Bruisers, I actually have in my top 3 New Pornographers albums. You're wondering the others being Twin Cinema and Electric Version. I've got Brill Bruisers just after those. So yeah, 2014 was a motherfucker.
2014 was a very good year in music. A couple of those records that have really stuck with me, Better Modern Sounds and Country Music, and Atlas specifically. The War on Drugs I'm going to talk about here in a second, but those 2 records I've probably listened to more than anything in my 5 through 3 on my larger list, which kind of showcases where my musical interests kind of went post 2014. But for me, I've got number 5, Brian Eno and Carl Hyde, High Life. Really cool, kind of reverb drenched, synth drenched, ambient groove record from Brian Eno and Carl Hyde. Loved this record. I still listen to this. Number 4, the self-titled record from St. Vincent. This is still a good record. It felt a lot bigger in the moment than it feels 10 years later. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a good album. That's the one with Digital Witness on it.
Yeah, this just felt like kind of a meeting point for her. She had just put out that record with David Byrne.
Right.
She had made all these cultural hit lists over the previous 3 or 4 years, was starting to be accepted in a more pop sensibility standpoint. And this record really fused that.
Yeah, this record. Then she put out Mass Seduction, which that's when I found out she started to get annoying. Then Daddy's Home was garbage, but her most recent one, actually, All Born Screaming, is probably my favorite.
It was good.
St. Vincent since self-titled.
Agree. Right. And so that's kind of what I mean is like this felt really big in the moment, and I don't think it's held up because the music she's made in the years since has been a little bit more challenging in not the best ways. Number 3, this is a record that does not stand the test of time. Well, I still love this record. I will stand by the record itself, but not the artist. This is Sun Kil Moon's Benji.
It's kind of like a Ryan Adams record now. It's kind of like Cold Roses to me.
Yeah, he's more of a dick than kind of a creepy weirdo. Yeah, like Mark Hoslick is just kind of an asshole. And this record, what it still does to me is reshape how you write the lyrics to a song. And I still find lyrically aspects of this album to be really fascinating. I don't really go back to it because it really kind of resonates with like a period in my life when I was reading like nonstop David Foster Wallace short stories. And I was really interested in like how you just overwhelm people with words and with language and not necessarily like the sonic quality of what can happen within a record and what can happen musically. So it just like thematically isn't really where I'm at. And also like, I just don't feel like listening to Sun Kil Moon anymore. I think everything he's done since this musically has been just like a tier worse and worse and worse.
Is that the record where the first song is about like Clarissa and the aerosol can and it blew up and it killed her and she didn't expect to die that way and it sucks? But
Yeah, and it was just
yeah,
like, so I was 29 years old in 2014. So I was kind of
yeah,
at this point where like you hear these sort of like very small stories from around the world, and you like it just blows your brain, and like it reshapes the way that you see kind of where you're at in your life and how everything can end in this like meaningless way. Really fascinating stuff that I just don't return to as much anymore. Number two, Spoons, They Want My Soul. I definitely listen to this record. This is my the last Spoon record I really really loved, and I think kind of completed a really cool arc for this band. Um, I know that you're big on their record from 2017. I believe Hot Fuss, is that whatever? Or, no, that's was it
yeah.
Hot Fuzz?
The Hot Fuzz,
Yeah,
that album's okay. I
yeah.
don't love that record. I don't love any Spoon album that came after ever since They Want My Soul. That's like
Mm,
their best album since Ga 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 Ga, and I think
yeah.
yeah, their best in 10 years.
I saw them on this tour and they just crushed it. Really good stuff. And the number one, no surprises to anybody who's listening to this podcast, The War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream. This still holds up. This album is so good that Adam Grandishiel has really not tried to like change his songwriting approach since then. It's just kind of like, how do we make Lost in the Dream songs sound bigger and better? And I'm here for it because this is perfect stuff. All right, let's dive into our top 10 albums. We got a few more segments to dive into here. So, settle in. We got about another hour's worth of this for you all here. This is our top albums episode of the year. This is our favorite episode of the year. It's midday. Dave doesn't even have to like fall asleep halfway through the recording of this episode. We are
No,
up. We
this
are
is rare
alive.
to do this.
There's
Right?
no mid-afternoon Arsenal match. The Mets and the Cubs are in hibernation. Although the Mets aren't necessarily hibernating right now. Like Juan Soto's just like, let me fucking play baseball right now.
It's Juan Soto and signing no-name pitchers as reclamation projects, like Griffin
What do you think
Canning.
what do you think the
Okay.
chances are that we get a NLDS Cubs Mets this year? I feel like the Cubs are starting to make some moves that make me at least a little bit excited. The Kyle Tucker signing.
Kyle Tucker.
Nice.
Yeah. What are the chances? I hope I don't ever have to find out. I don't want that.
The last time we played in the playoffs against each other, we were still just kind of like Twitter buds.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what it'll do to our friendship if we have to play a meaningful series against each other. All right, so let's dive in here. Dave, give me your number 10 album of 2024, and we'll kind of go back and forth with your pick, my pick, so on and so forth.
My number 10 was Only God Is Above Us by Vampire Weekend. Vampire Weekend don't miss. We know this. This is also one of the best live shows that I've seen all year. They've gotten to be so much fun live, like stadium, like arena rock done right. The song, second to last song, Pravda, I think it deserves a place up there with their classics in the sense that it's like New York City Arcana plus a guitar lick that sounds like You Enjoy Myself, plus the sound of a subway. So this kind of felt to me like the first Vampire Weekend record to directly like reference older Vampire Weekend records. Kind of like a not insignificant amount of Easter eggs for fans, kind of with the drums right in the first song with Ice Cream Piano. It's like, oh, those are the Vampire Weekend drums. Okay. The one difference between this album, the past ones, this one has more feedback and kind of almost the sound of like grinding metal at times versus the very clean VW records of the past. But no, I mean, Vampire Weekend, they take forever between records, but they know what they're doing. You know, they're always going to be good. And this one is. So
this one is. You'll hear more about this shortly, but I share a lot of your sentiments. Great call there at number 10. I am surprised it's number 10, but we'll get into that here. Maybe we'll have towards the end of the episode a fiery debate about the positioning here. But my number 10 is two records from an artist that Dave passed my way. One of those funny, we got this thread where someone will drop a record in, and 9 times out of 10, people like kind of give it the thumbs up and all right, cool, I'm going to listen to this, or I'll listen to it right now and give you my immediate thoughts. For whatever reason, myself and our buddy Josh didn't say anything And about a week goes by and Dave sends it again and said, "You fuckers didn't say anything. This is a
Yeah.
great record. What the hell is going on? You need to listen to it." And I said, "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I was probably busy listening to some, ridiculous Goose Jam. And you were in the right. You were the one telling me what I need to be listening to here." And that is Muriel Grossman's Devotion. And then later in the year, she released The Light of the Mind. These are two fascinating sax driven jazz records. She is a Belgian sax extraordinaire. Um, Devotion's been on repeat
Based out of
pretty
Ibiza,
much.
though. That's where.
Ibiza, excuse me.
Yeah.
Devotion's been on repeat for me basically all year. This is very melodic and riffy sax playing. Like she finds a melody, she finds a riff, and she just builds upon that, and you get like 10 to 20 minutes of that riff building and kind of coming down and building again. A lot of dynamics in her work. Just endless earworms. If you're kind of at a point where you want to hear more from the jazz world but don't know exactly where to begin, this is kind of a good starting point because it's really long and experimental, but it's also, like I said, very riffy. There's a lot to chew on to. There's a lot to hold on to as you're going through the overall record. Cannot recommend it enough. Absolutely loved this sort of stuff. Bonus points is that Muriel she builds her tours around DIY shows at the venue of your sponsoring. So if you dig her record, you want to help her and her band out, you just got to provide the space and they're going to be there. They're going to play a show for you. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, on her like Windows 95 quality website, it's like coming to North America at some point. Tell me where you want me to play. She hasn't come to North America yet. Maybe all that I just have to say, venue down the block from my house, Abrams Art Center. You'll be welcome there with open arms.
Come to the Abrams. I'll fly out there.
Terrible idea, actually.
I think that's actually a great live Beyond the Pond setup there. Let's make that happen. All right.
You can set up outside the Abrams Art Center, where the comedian Hannah Gadsby just had recently did a residency. That was great. I saw one of those shows. They're fantastic. Okay.
All right. What's your number 9?
Number 9, Yard Act. Where's My Utopia? So this came out in February. I never really stopped listening to it. I think kind of like when it came out in February, most publications gave it like the equivalent of like high 7s, low 8s, kind of like, oh, very good record, fun, British, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't see it on anyone else's year-end list. So I think it kind of suffered from a February release and or people thinking that it was a bit light. Fronted by, I think his name is like James Smith, talky British guy in a trench coat, but he's actually funny. It's like a very dry British sense of humor. So they combine grooves kind of like Gorillaz with the energy of like an early Guy Ritchie movie with the humor of, let's say, long-running British sitcom like Peep Show, for example, which you can watch on Freevee. Highly recommend it. And they make a lot of videos, and they're put in with the care and the effort that they think someone's actually going to watch them, like it's the 90s or something. So if you like Gorillaz, if you like LCD Sound System, their first record was kind of like talky British post-punk, but the second one is much lusher and much more like the groove-based bands I've described. You should check it out. The song When the Laughter Stops, I guess according to Apple, was the song I played the most the month of March. I think it's got the catchiest chorus 2024. But yeah, generally talky British guy is not something that would be in my wheelhouse, but this is a great record.
I dug this record. It's not 100% my wheelhouse, so it didn't end up making my list, but I definitely appreciate it. Everything you're saying is right. It's that late 90s, early 2000s kind of urban hip coolness it's a vibe. It's a very good vibe. All right, my number 9 is a record I think is on your list, so maybe we both can chat about this. This is Sea Wind and Battery's East Coast Cosmic Dreamscape. What an album title. I'm just going to say that again. East Coast Cosmic Dreamscape. Dreamscaper, excuse me. Yeah. My goodness. Let me get this accurate for our viewers here. Cosmic Dreamscaper. All right. Mike Horn, the greatest ambient slide guitar jammer in the BTP world. Come on. Like this guy, he concocts melodies and musical vistas and musical spaces in a way that I can't get enough of. And Clock Watching came out, his debut record, in 2022. We ate that up. That was, a lot of these like great ambient albums I love tend to be there when I need to relax, tend to be there when I'm trying to read, tend to be there if I'm like doing work and I just kind of want music on, but I don't want to like be too consumed by it. This is that, but then so much more, because there's so many more ideas within his songs that I find myself listening to this not out of purpose, but more out of just like, I just want to hear it again. I think the thing that's fascinating to me is that he takes the foundation of what he created with Clock Watching. He adds more bass, more reverb, this like 80s sheen, and somehow tops the work of his original album. Clock Watching was one of those like perfect debuts where you risk asking the artist to never change. Like, don't do anything different. Just make this over and over and over again. But then he takes these chances, he takes some risks, he elevates his music in a really fascinating way, and it really kind of opens up what Mike Horn can do in a fascinating way, like going forward. I can't wait to hear how he interprets this kind of base level foundational music that he's really mastered and that he's playing around with in a manner that allows his own kind of artistic vision to take over. So I'm fully on board with wherever this dude goes. This record was not what I was expecting by any means for his follow up to Clock Watching, and sometimes that's all the better. So I'm very into this. Dave, this was your number 7 album of the year. Why don't you share a little thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between this album and Clock Watching is that you can listen to East Coast Cosmic Dreamscaper in the car. If you listen to Clock Watching in the car is being driven off the road. You'll die happy, but you're you might have a hard time explaining to the insurance company that you drove off the road because you're listening to the sweet ambient tones of Mike Horn. But ECCD, let's call it, has it's got some like forward momentum. It's got some crispness. It's got some drums. It almost the big song, the second song, New Moon, kind of almost reminds you of like Bruce Hornsby circa 1988, except without vocals. Just like that kind of like, very crisp, well produced, upbeat song. I know this record also has a lot more contributions from the lap steel player, whose name I think is Jared Annis, that he often plays with in a live setting. I don't know if Jared Annis is officially part of like Seawood and Battery at this point. If it's like a 2-man show or just like Mike has him on the record, but certainly his contributions are excellent and prominent. But yeah, it's he's done it again with the record that certainly has everything that you enjoyed about Clock Watching, but moves things forward in kind of a peppier and crisper direction. And it's he's a sure bet. He's a great dude who puts out great records. So
what more do you need? Great dude who puts out great records. We love everything you do, Mike, and we can't wait to hear where this goes. All right, let's dive into your number 8 album of 2024, Dave.
Number 8 is a self-titled from a band called Silverada. Not their first album. It's the first album under that name. What they used to be called Mike and the Moon Pies, but I think they had a name change partly because they said we were tired of being middle-aged men called Mike and the Moon Pies. But also because this album kind of not entirely new direction, sort of a heftier sonic palette that kind of implies, whereas Mike and the Moon Pies were like an excellent honky tonk Texas 2-step band that you could listen to and drink your Schlitz at the jukebox. Mike like Silverado does that, but there's also more atmosphere, some heavier guitars and points, kind of times where they almost sound like Pearl Jam meets the Allman Brothers. I think that was a description I actually got from Rolling Stone that kind of made sense to me. But really, end of the day, are a really kick-ass country band that has evolved. The first song and the last song, being Radio Wave and Hellbent for Leather, are probably among 2 of the best songs I've heard this year. Like I said, it's a sound that pairs really well with neon and Schlitz and jukeboxes. And they're just It's very well produced. It sounds good. The songs are catchy, and there's really good contributions from every member of the band. There are now certainly, I think, this lead singer, lead lyricist, writer, Mike Hartmeyer, I believe his last name is. If I get that wrong, I apologize. Well, he's the front man, but there's very equal contributions from all the members of the band, especially the pedal steel player. So great band, just with a new name, and I'm hoping to catch them at some point. I know the closest they came to New York City was, I think, playing the Wonder Bar in Asbury Park.
Nice.
This 45-year-old guy doesn't drive out to Asbury Park to see bands. I'm sorry, but they'll be back around soon enough, I'm sure.
We got limits here. Yeah, I really liked the last Mike and the Moon Pies record, and I really enjoyed Silverado. This made my honorable mentions. I feel like I need to give this another spin. Everything you're describing is kind of in line with, what I love about Sturgill Simpson, what I love about being in Nashville. So I got to give this another spin here. I just might not spend enough time in neon laced bars with while drinking schlitzes. That's just.
Well, that's all I do.
That's it. That's it. That's your life.
That's it. I'm not here being a dad. I'm just all the Schlitz and neon lace bars in New York City. All right,
it just runs the pool table here.
Right.
Great record though. I'm gonna give that another spin here today. We're like 60 degrees and still spring or late fall, early spring here in Denver. This is just a magical time of year and kind of perfect for country music like that. And speaking of, we are going to go to my number 8 album of 2024. This is in line with the way I felt about St. Cloud, Waxahachie's record from 2020, as well as Big Time, Angel Olsen's record from 2022. This is The Past is Still Alive from Hooray for the Riff Raff. Linda Segarra's long-running Americana project reaches what I would consider its apex here in this album. Time Ain't Accidental from Jess Williamson, another record that hit me really hard last year that I would say is in line with this. This is just Midwestern heartland country crooning, just aching, powerful, really painful songwriting about America at large, what it means in the 21st century, who Linda is as they continue to grow and evolve as an artist and as a person. Huge vistas, deeply personal explorations. The album closes with a song called Ogallala that is a town in western Nebraska that plays a huge role in the book Lonesome Dove, of which I've gotten really obsessed with that series of books over the last year or so. And my family and I drive through it every time we drive back to Chicago. And it kind of is that signifier of you're out of Colorado, you are in the heartland right now. And, you just jump on I-80 and it is one direction with corn everywhere all the way to the Great Lakes. And this album, the song, there's just a lot on here that just really hit me about my own evolving feelings about America and about my love for the heartland of this country. And I listened to this record, I think the first time on the beach in Mexico while getting ready for night 3 of the Mexico fish run. So maybe there's a little bit of like a personality, personal bias there of where I was when I was listening to it. But that vibe stuck with me every time I put it on. Sometimes you listen to a record early on in the year and you think, oh man, this is totally going to make my top 10 by the end of the year. And by the time you get to June or July, you don't really want to hear it anymore. I know that we both have those records that happen on kind of an annual basis. And you feel bad because you connected with it, but like maybe it's more stuff happened that hit you a little bit harder. Maybe it was the record just didn't have as much lasting value. It's one of those weird ephemeral things that you have to like kind of consider throughout the year. This was one of those records that worked in the opposite. Every time I put it on, it was exactly what I wanted to hear at that moment in time. So really, really dig this. Hooray for the Riff Raff. The Past is Still Alive. My number 8 record of 2024. And I'm just going to go right into my number 7 because Dave did his number 7, which was East Coast Cosmic Dreamscaper, the Seawood Battery record. My number 7 record, we've talked about this man a couple of times already in this episode. Why not talk about him again here, just under an alias, if you will? This is Johnny Blue Skies with Sturgill Simpson, the Passage du Désir. This record, man, this is where Sturgill Simpson reached that coveted artistic dreamscape or dream space, excuse me, where he can try on any style of music and it somehow works. He did this in 2019 with his heavy ZZ Top-esque album. I forget the title of that. Do you remember that? If you don't, it's okay. But
No.
you know what I'm talking about. He made this very riff heavy guitar driven record. And then he made this that is kind of like 80s country to the max. The production value on this is outstanding. The ballads are really, really heartfelt and aching. There's some groove on here that makes you want to, do the two-step.
There's a yacht rock on
There's some yacht rock on here.
The second song is total yacht rock.
It's him. When you reach this point where you can kind of put out a record and it's
Sound and Fury.
That's Sound and Fury. That was the 2019 record. Thank you. But when you put out a record like this that is adjacent to your style of music, but is just different enough that it forces your listeners to kind of reconsider where you're at in your headspace while making this record, who you are as an artist, what your evolution is. It's a really cool thing. And sometimes these experiments totally flop. Sometimes they totally fail. This one didn't fail in any sort of way. Every time I put this record on, I happened to end up on my back patio, grilling on my Blackstone, smoking meat, eating, hanging out by the fire. This was just the backyard barbecue album of 2024. We talk often about the barbecue set vibe in a Fish thing, and it's sometimes slightly a criticism. It's not that way in an album. When an album is a backyard patio barbecue record, that is as much of a high praise as the two of us can offer. So definitely recommend this.
This album, if I listened to it more, I probably would have cracked my top 20, but I just didn't listen to it enough for some reason. Maybe it's because it was when it came out. But what I did, though, is certainly listen to his live shows, because this album was accompanied by his triumphant return to the stage, which was just these like 3-hour Southern rock jam bandy shows with all these covers and crazy guitar solos, because his guitarist from the first two albums, Lars Joe Metz, who they call Little Joe, he's back in the band, who he hadn't been for a while, but he's back and he's great. And I think, some of those shows, there's a lot of footage on YouTube. There's full shows on Nugsnet. It's just, he returned to the live stage in a major way. This is a very good record. I have to make a point to listen to it some more in 2025. So
I'm wrapping up my final end of the year project, which is organizing the top Eggy jams of 2024 into a list that I could share with all of you. When I finish that, I have two slight projects I want to do in the intervening weeks before new albums start coming in. One is catching up on all the King Gizzard's shows from the fall, and the other is catching up on all the Sturgill Simpson shows from the fall. I'm going to kind of hop around. I'm not going to listen to them all, but
it's like he basically has 30 songs. He kind of shuffles the order.
Cool.
It isn't so much like
I can just pick two locations I like and just do that. That's perfect.
Exactly. It's not quite set list changing like Gizzard or Fish or like that.
There we go.
But so anyway, my number 6 was also on Brian's list. Zachary Cale, Next Year's Ghost. This is the music equivalent of a warm blanket. This is the musical equivalent to me of the Helper Dog album, like the warm golden retrievers that come visit sick kids in the hospital. So I know he's known for being a singer-songwriter with his main instrument being guitar, but for this one he opted to compose on the piano, and I think there's like some Fender Rhodes, Mellotron, and he may have inadvertently made his best album. It's really immaculately produced and mixed, really great supporting cast of players, including the improvisational bass player Shahad Ismaili, who plays bass in Mellotron. That guy's played with Dylan in and Mark Ribot. I even think like Beth Orton. He's everywhere. He's awesome. I was kind of fortunate to watch Zachary Kell play the album in full in a small club in Alphabet City in June. And whereas his album Fall Spring, I listened to that a ton over the pandemic. I might like this record even better. I think the first time I heard it, I was standing on the subway platform outside the Museum of Modern Art. I think I had it on shuffle, so it came through in the wrong order. And I thought, wow, this album is really impressive. I don't know what he was thinking about the sequencing. And then I realized I'd gone wrong, but it's almost like Brian said, like a Daniel Lanois atmosphere to it, especially for the third song called House on Fire, which has an incredible like pedal steel, which winds its way throughout the song, just like a river. The first song, Heart of Tin, it sort of reminds me a lot of the first song on Yola Tango's Painful, being like Big Day Coming Slow.
Oh yeah.
How it kind of slow piano motif kind of builds, kind of really, really draws you in. Just a fantastic album that I see myself listening to quite a bit in 2025 as well. So almost didn't think he had it in him. It's great.
Yeah, when I listen to Fall Spring, you kind of feel like, okay, this is someone who's fully arrived, and they have the guitar. They've got it's all based on songs. And his 2022 record, I think it was called Skywriting or Skywatching.
Skywriting.
Skywriting. It was good. It just it didn't have that saying, like there was something I couldn't put my finger on it. Just didn't, sometimes a record, like you're like, I like these songs, but it doesn't hit me the way that it did.
Yeah. This is the step up.
This is a step up, and this is not what I was expecting. And just a really cool experiment for him that I hope he does more of. My number 6 is on your list as well. This is the Mesesthetics and James Brandon Lewis, their self-titled record. You've got Fugazi, the rhythm section of Fugazi, combined with the most prolific sax player of our time. And what do you get out of that combination? You get massive, wild, and weird punk-fused jazz jams. This shit rocks. It is groove. It feels like something you kind of want to like rub shoulders with other people in a sweaty basement club. It rocks your brain, and it keeps you spinning throughout. I could not stop listening to this record. Every year, there's a few of those albums that just work. I call them kind of when in doubt records. I spoke about this earlier with the Jessica Pratt album. I don't know what to spin right now, and I need something. I'll throw this on.
Yeah.
The album cover looks great. You know from what you heard that you want to hear it again. It's not too long that it's going to require you carving out an afternoon to really consume. And this was one of those. I'm in the grocery store. I'm cooking food. I'm picking up the kids. I'm reading something, whatever it may be. I need something to listen to right now from 2024. And this was right there for me. I love this album. I'm so fascinated by everything that James Brandon Lewis is doing as an artist. And to hear this combination was really cool to me. This is on your list as well. I believe this is your number 5.
Yeah, so number 5. So yeah, like you said, the record I put on, I can't decide what to put on. And if the idea of like Fugazi with a saxophone player instead of Ian MacKaye doesn't excite you, then get the fuck out of here. Because who would want that? I mean, this is one of those records that makes you feel instantly cooler when you put it on. The second song called, I think the second song is called Emergence. It's just like sleek. It's like groovy. It's sleek. It kind of has a lot in common with kind of like the New York downtown scene, Knitting Factory, late 80s, early 90s, like with John Zorn's Naked City, that type of like punk jazz, they almost like called it. Yeah, plus there's like some compositions throughout. It's not entirely like freeform improv. There's definitely, they like thought about this thing and wrote some songs. But yeah, I can't find too many flaws with this record. So
It's great shit. It's great shit. All right, we're going to go to a segment now before we dive into our full top fives. We've been really positive here, aside from a little bit of shade that we've thrown at our Goose guys, but it's okay. You guys are doing well. You guys are playing big venues and got all the good stuff backstage. You can take a little bit of criticism from us. We are going to talk about the albums that kind of pissed us off in 2024. We ushered in this segment last year based off of this was the New Blue Sun album category, where we were like, in theory, we should absolutely love that Andre 3000 made a sprawling flute jazz record. But in practice, it was not our thing. It felt a bit unnecessary. And we shared our feelings on that on this pod last year. I don't want to call out the artists that I have listed in the subject line here. I just want to say that just throwing synthesizers and kind of dreamy, reverb drenched guitar riffs into your songs is not going to win me over, man. I'm not that easy. All right. That's just what I'm going to say. You can put the pieces together about who I'm talking about if you'd like. I don't want to call out growing.
You gotta be wine and
artists.
dine.
I got to be wine and dine a little bit. So, Dave, give me a couple bands that released albums this year that kind of pissed you off, and what pissed you off about them.
All right, the first that comes to mind is the band Wand. Album's called Vertigo. Wand being in all capital letters. This is the band fronted by Corey Hansen. The last Wand album came out in 2019. I love that record. That was in my top 5. That was just kind of like a scrappier version of Ben's era Radiohead with hundreds of cool fucking guitar pedals. The guitars like blasted off and did square dances and ran themselves down your throat. It was just a cool record. In between Wand albums, I think like the lineup changed significantly. I think it may have like changed by half. The dudes may have changed over. Corey Hansen put out a solo record last year called Western Come that I enjoyed. Thought it was good.
Yeah.
Kind of played to his strengths. But this new Wand album kind of doesn't have anything I enjoyed about the last one. The new Wand, it basically is kind of like a crappier version of Corey Hansen's solo record. It's just kind of drony, and all the songs segue together, and he's kind of trying to get some kind of Western noir that doesn't work and just kind of saps everything that was fun about his band. So it kind of feels like, all right, you already made this record last year, and now the Wand name implies that there's going to be something more fun and like propulsive about it, and that didn't arrive. The other one that kind of annoyed me was came out in January, the album by Slater Kinney, Little Rope, and this kind of annoyed me because truth be told, I actually liked some of these songs. It might have been the Slater Kinney album I liked most since No Cities to Love in 2015. But it annoyed me because, like, you know, until Janet Weiss is back in the band, like nothing they can do is going to approach those highs. And you can still be decent songwriters, but, you know, just using your touring drummer on the record is not going to help anything. So, yeah, I mean, they can still sing and they can still write songs. Just whatever is the issue between them and Janet, just get rid of it. There's a word in Yiddish, schmeiss. That means to whack. Schmeiss it. Take whatever your issues are, schmeiss them, get Janet back, do a real reunion tour, make that like the most exciting rock and roll tour of 2025. Go ahead, play these songs, Little Rope. But until that happens, you know, just gonna be Diet Coke. It's like Slater Kinney is the Diet Coke of rock and roll.
Those are all good reasons to be upset. And it's interesting, like from the Wand standpoint, because Corey Hansen put on another record in 2021 that I loved. I think that was ranked very highly for me in that year. I felt the same way about the Wand record. I want that 2019 vibe of their record where I felt like anything was possible in their music, and then let Corey do what he wants to do solo, not combine those into one thing. I got a couple albums on my list here. Kamasi Washington's Fearless Movement. Some good moments of this record, but way too much spoken word over jazz, way too much singing over jazz for my vibes. Really was not into that aspect of the album, and it tended to be on the longer songs on the record. excuse me, Bonnie Light Horseman's Keep Me on Your Mind / See You Free. I know we got some Bonnie Light Horseman fans out there, so I don't want to offend anyone. For me, the 2020 record was absolutely perfect. Time and a Place album. And I just don't need anything more. And so to release like a 20 song album just wasn't going to do it for me.
That record was perfect, and ever since then, it's kind of been like diminishing returns. What
How
was
I
the one
feel.
after that? It was like Rolling Golden Holy, or
Yeah, something
it
like
was
that.
okay. But when you get it as right as you get it on the first record, and given those three, it's kind of almost like I don't even know if they were meant to make another record other than that first one. That it was so successful, they kept going. But
It kind of reminds me of the Boy Genius thing where they put out that EP in 2018 that was
right,
so good and such an elevation of those three young singer-songwriters' perspectives on the world and having them all unite. And then they put out this record last year, title it The Record. So serious, and they've gone on this tour and it's the most self-serious, self-congratulatory tour of 2023. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I'm
right.
just small doses for some of these things. Jamie XX in Waves. In Color was my number 2 album of 2015. This album is just pretty boring. I don't understand what he was going for here. I don't understand why we had to wait 9 years between records for this. This dude seems to really just enjoy playing like invite only clubs in Europe. And man, like if that's where your head's at, go and do it. That's totally cool. I
It's a
did
living.
not. I read so many articles this year that were praising this album. It made a ton of year-end lists, like really reputable news sources and musical sources. And I was just like, what are you guys hearing that I'm not hearing? I don't get it. Big shout out here. This is a big personal gripe. U2 put out the 20th anniversary of How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. I will ride for that record. I think that there are some really great songs on that record. It feels in a lot of ways like the last U2 classic record, but it also has some hints. Looking at You, A Man and a Woman, looking at You, Yahweh, of like where this band was going to go in the worst ways possible over the last 20 years. And how do I know that there are hints of where they're going to go in the worst ways possible over the last 20 years? Because they released all the B-sides, and all the B-sides are absolute complete crap. This is a band that used to like,
There's there's like two good ones.
there's a couple, but like
Yeah.
most of it, and it's just like a lot of like rewrites of songs that like
All
didn't
because of
need
you too.
3 or 4 versions. Like it's just so clear that what this band needs more than anything is to either, be forced to put out a record in like 6 weeks time or stop writing new music and just go on tour and tour your old albums. Like I wouldn't have a problem with that.
There's like whole records on Bono's phone that are not going to see the light of day. Like you read that New York Times interview with David Marchese where he's like playing and like unreleased U2 songs on his phone in a bar and singing along. That's
the world, man.
everyone should go back to the New York Times and find like the Bono interview, which is just it's unbelievable.
Do you think he's just really upset that people didn't like when he put Songs of Innocence on their iPhones and he just doesn't know what to do with himself at this point?
No, it's just that Bono can't help being Bono. I read his book. I read the Bono memoir, and some of it's actually very interesting until the last 100 pages, which are this. Then I said this to Steve Jobs. Then I did this to this famous person. Then I this famous person. Then I said to this. Then I said to George Bush. Hey, like the last 100 pages, you just have to skim it. Be like, okay. He just doesn't. No editor can reel him in. It's all or nothing.
That'll be on my list this year. To
U2, they still could have a good record in them. I have. There's enough delay pedals on the Edge's rig that they could do something cool.
You just got to let the edge roll. 2 more quickly here. I've got Bon Iver's Sable EP. I liked this record, but again, it's been 5 years since I don't understand why this is what we got in 5 years' time. There's some great promise here. There's some great like foundations for songs. Can we just get like a full LP, man? Like this is kind of your job. And then we both were on the same page with this one. The final record from Japan Droids, Fate and Alcohol. sometimes all you need is a PR statement from the band that says, hey, we're just going our separate ways. We'll do one more tour. See you guys later. Instead, here we got another record that I don't think either one of us needed. It just wasn't, it was not good.
No, it sucked. They would have been fine with the 3 albums and peace out.
That's
But
it.
they shouldn't have put that record out because
No.
there's no one's going to listen to it. I mean, no one in the end, no one's going to like remember Fate and Alcohol anyway. It's not going to matter. But just the fact that it existed at all is annoying to me.
Especially since Celebration Rock and that record defined such an era in indie rock music, and I think you and I became friends a couple of years after that, and that was one of those records that we both had a lot of opinions on and both really enjoyed. This just felt like a diluting of a great rock band from the 2010s. All right, we still got a little bit to go here. We hope you guys are enjoying yourself. We got some more music to share. I'm going to jump in here with my number 5 album of 2024, which Dave has already talked about, but this is Mary Halverson's Cloudward. This is as close to fall 94 Fish as you could get in jazz.
Yes.
Truly weird, mind-bending sort of stuff that was right in my zone, right in my wheelhouse. She's a New York-based guitarist, as Dave talked about. There's a ton of exploratory, non-melodic musical exploration throughout this record. This was definitely one of those records that when I put on, like if I put on to read while listening to this, I would get lost in the music and I would be, just kind of like taken by where the music took me. And so I would get distracted very easily. So whereas sometimes I love jazz for the fact that I can have it on in sort of an ambient nature, live, explore the world, kind of like have it in the background and as a part of my life. This is one of those records that just like it refuses to let you look away. Just fascinating stuff. Super into what she does, and like Dave mentioned, the horns on this record are really, really the showcase. So, killer stuff. Mary Halverson's Cloudward, number 5 for me. Dave, we did your number 5, which was the Methetics and James Brandon Lewis. Let's go to your number 4 album of 2024. This was a celebratory record, if there ever was a celebratory record.
This album was everywhere, and that's okay. Charlie XCX, Brat. Pop records usually aren't this well constructed. This is like a marvel of construction. Catchy, memorable from the jump, doesn't let up. Hooks upon hooks upon hooks. The hooks have hooks. You put it on, the first song, it's like, yeah, I get into this. The first song being like 360. Boom, 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 boom. I'm everywhere. I'm so Julia. Yeah. I mean, zeitgeisty. Everyone talks about the Brat summer. Kamala is Brat until she got bitch slapped, until she's Brat until she wasn't. Most of America didn't really care. Zeitgeisty, sometimes the zeitgeist is correct. I know she's playing Barclays Center, I think in May of 2025. My wife is going to go with my daughter. There were other tickets I wanted to go, but the allocation number didn't fit me, so I might try to get like a ticket some other way. I don't know. I'd like to see her. And then the album, she like remixed it as like this is Brat, but totally different. So she kind of put out like a second record building on this record. The song Mean Girls has these like incredibly in the red synths that just go like just every time I think I'm like kind of lame, like too Optimus being too much like, I don't know, John Perez in the New York Times, like an old guy trying to get into pop music. No, this is a great fucking record. This is, yeah.
And this is one of those records that like it was everywhere, and so you had to experience it no matter if you wanted to or not. It was everywhere over the summer. And when you experience, because this made my larger list, when you listen to it, no matter how much you consume pop music versus kind of more underground experimental music, it does have that thing that reaches you. I loved this record. I think everything you're saying is right. The hooks upon hooks. She just kind of had a vibe this year that matched 2024. I think she did everything she could to make the 90-day sprint of the Kamala Harris campaign feel really relevant and a part of the culture. And it for me, it worked for a while. And I think what's interesting about it is that as time goes on, this will be seen as kind of a marking point of where a lot of people felt, but that ultimately didn't win out. And sometimes, from an artistic standpoint, that ends up being more powerful than if this had been a precursor to the next president. So,
Yeah.
that's like my extremely, extremely glass half full based around this record. But I loved this. This was killer stuff. Good stuff.
And she was funny when she hosted Saturday Night Live. She was good.
She did the double duty and she crushed it.
Double duty, and did a really funny impersonation of, I think it was Adele auditioned to be in Wicked. That made me laugh.
They did like one of those pre-recorded skits of her flirting with various male SNL cast members, but then just insulting them and insulting them to the podcast that they listen to. And I thought it was killer. All right. My number 4 record of 2024 is Brittany Howard's What Now? This is the follow-up to her excellent 2019 record, Jamie. This record blew me away the first time I heard it. And the first time I heard it, I attended a work conference that morning. I had to be there very early. And then I, wasn't really checking my phone. And I did that thing where you check your phone on like a break and you've got like 130 text messages from people and just full conversations that have been happening while you've been in some sort of a work meeting. And half of the conversation, our thread, was around this album that had dropped that day and whether or not it was too produced, too overproduced, just the right amount of overproduced. And so I threw this record on when I was rushing through emails to get out of the office on a Friday afternoon, and it made me happy. And it really it made the day okay. And it continued to throughout the year. Some would say that it's overproduced. That's okay. Some people can feel that way. Some people on the call right now might feel that it was overproduced. I don't know. I would say it's just the right amount of overproduction to blow you away.
Okay.
There's enough here in like 35 minutes that you never once get bored, and you're always kind of thinking to yourself, yes, you probably could have scaled back a few of the layers to these songs, but also why? We are in the era of the album being dead. Why not just load this up with sounds and ideas and just kind of blow you away from a pop rock standpoint? So I was totally on board with this.
I like this record a lot. It just kind of gives you whiplash. Like when I first heard it, I'm like, oh my God, this is the future. This is the future of rock and roll. With Sean Everett, her big collaborator, of course, being a big Adam Granchiel War on Drugs collaborator as well as I think he produced the last like Mike Gordon Band album. He's everywhere. Funny, the Alabama Shakes actually had like a one-off reunion last night, I think.
Oh, interesting.
I just saw it like this morning, but this is a good album. I think that she's going to be around for a while. She's a really good songwriter, really knows what things want to sound like. I think this is her second solo record. By like album number 3, that's when she'll kind of strike the balance between just enough and with the songs to match. But she's, obviously extremely talented.
Yeah, and I think the songs tend to be there, but I do get what you mean. I think that there's just kind of like she steps into a studio, I can do everything, so why not just do it all? And I think that next step is scaling that back slightly and just seeing kind of what kind of more sparse sounds, because I feel like the latter half of the album was probably my favorite part about it, where you got a little bit more silence. So really good stuff there from Brittany Howard. Just excited to see where she goes with the next step of her career. Moving forward here, your number 3 record is my number 2 record. So we'll talk about this right now. How convenient.
MJ Lenderman, Manning Fireworks. Not a big surprise. We are men in our 40s and almost 40s. I probably played the song She's Leaving You more than any other song in 2024. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably going to like MJ Lenderman. He's basically Jason Molina reborn as a clever nerd with amazing eyebrows and a fuzz pedal. There are lots of quotable lines on this record. The quotables don't get in the way of great songwriting. Probably my favorite lyric of 2024 is "Go rent a Ferrari and sing the blues. Believe that Clapton was the second coming," which just skewers a certain type of man who may or may not have a ponytail. Just a skewering of toxic masculinity, which he kind of does all over this record. It's, another one of those albums that you put on. We don't know what you want to put on, but it was a bit of a sonic level up from his last album, the studio album Boat Songs. And then in between, he had Live and Loose, the excellent live record. Some of those songs made it to studio form with Unmanning Fireworks. Actually, I think was Rudolph. Got like a full studio treatment. Just it appeals to my love of patio, heartland, rock and roll. I mean, what else is there to say? One of those, greatest hits without the hits type records.
Yeah, this is my number 2 record of the year. Neil and Jace Molina had a Gen Z kid, and I'm here for everything that he does going forward. The guitars are shreddy. The lyrics are clever enough to kind of keep you thinking about them, keep you coming back for more. But like you said, there's a ton of depth to it as well. I've loved everything that I've heard from this dude since first hearing Boat Songs a couple of years ago. And this record just jumped up in a way that once it came out, I was listening to it on a regular basis. And I was just like, I was all about it. I'm really hoping to see him in late February here in Denver, because I think he will put on a killer live show. I think if there's anything I'd love to hear from him going forward, those droney kind of feedback induced guitar solos that you get from 70s Neil, that you get from some of the Songs Ohio live sets. They released a great one this year. A little bit more space in that sort of standpoint, I think, would be really nice from a musical standpoint. But he knows how to write a really catchy song that doesn't feel like he's trying to write a really catchy song. Just hits you in a powerful way. And like Dave said, if you like anything that we talk about on this podcast, you're going to love this record. So Manning Fireworks, MJ Lendeman.
He sold out, I think, like 3 nights at Brooklyn Steel. I went back to see if there were tickets available, and there weren't. Some of those could fall off trees, who knows? But I'd like to see him live. But the live stuff doesn't, like you said, every song could stand to be, like 4 or 5 minutes, like a little more drawn out, a little more improv, especially, he's not charging unreasonable prices, but he's like, the band is good enough and he's enough a guitar hero that you kind of want to hear a little more soloing than he gives you right now on stage.
Yeah, I think that would be my biggest critique is, like, I thought Live and Loose was a killer rock record, but we talked about this a couple of years ago with Steve Hyden, why are indie bands struggling to sell out? And this is not really an argument for MJ Lenderman, because he is commanding a ton on the secondary market, because there's a big drive to see him. But there is kind of a sense of someone like him could be kind of a signpost of where indie and jam meet, where his songs don't necessarily have a necessary conclusion. They've got that kind of pavementy, kind of shackly, shaggy end to them that could just stretch on for another 5-6 minutes. And it'd be cool to hear, what he does if he kind of plays in the sort of standpoint as though he's playing his guitar in front of no one, kind of in the garage type of thing. All right, stepping back really quickly, my number 3 album of 2024. This is the underground version of Brat, if you will. This is Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee. Nothing will say 2024 in music to me like Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee. This first emerged on YouTube and on a few for purchase only, for download only music blogs, music sites. this was one of the greatest experiences in music in 2024. For the first 6 7 months, you could only listen to this on YouTube, which meant you couldn't turn your phone off while you were listening to it. You couldn't really like do anything. You had to be in the record, which was a little bit frustrating, but also part of the magic of the album. So it was like discovering a lost artifact to a forgotten America. It's the type of record that sounds like you're just driving through New Mexico, Arizona. You're flipping through the dial. Your cell phone doesn't work. You don't have anything downloaded. So you got to listen to the radio, and you're listening through a station, and you just hear these songs. And you're like, I have no idea who wrote these songs. I have no idea what these songs are, but I'm totally engrossed. It kind of reminded you of what learning about music was like 10, 15 years ago, and how much joy there was in the type of media of finding something, sharing it with other people, that kind of organic sense of spreading music. Just really, really hit hard. And musically, it's very familiar, but it's kind of this lost, abstract, haunting, very gorgeous vibe to it. Um, I would encourage anyone to go and check this out. It's now available on Bandcamp. You can listen to it all the way through, I think, one or two times, and then decide if you want to purchase it. Um, this is, I mean, there was also the kind of the tour around this album was canceled mid to late April, early May of this year. So there's a lot of mystery around this record because it feels in a lot of senses like an artist who has arrived in a big sense, but also maybe the last that we hear from this artist. So I was totally taken by this. Every time I listened to this record, I felt like I was lost in a world. I'm curious your thoughts because I know that this is not in your larger list, but I know we talked a lot about this album.
Well, it wasn't on my larger list because, as I'd said before, I just didn't want to go through the effort of listening to it on YouTube or downloading it from like a MediaFire page or whatever the heck it was. But whenever I did listen to it, I certainly enjoyed it. And then once it went to Bandcamp, I started doing a further deep dive into it. And yes, certainly had it been on Bandcamp from the jump, it probably would have made my list, in the sense that everything seems like songs from like very like David Lynchian, kind of like faded psychedelic Roy Orbison Sun Records type vibe. No, a lot of which is very good. I mean, something you can certainly dive into, but I don't think it showed up in Bandcamp until November. So I'll definitely
Something like
listen
that.
to it. I'll listen to it more in 2025. But I'm sorry to be a bit of a killjoy, but this much music out there, if you're gonna make it purposely difficult for me to listen to your album, I just won't.
I can't really argue against that. I get it.
That's
I had the music
not
not been as
you.
great as
It's
it was,
it's
I
not
feel
you.
like I
It's
would have been
me.
the same way. No, I get that. I totally get that. All right. Before we dive into our top two, we've got two more quick side segments here. The first one, 2019 albums. It's hard to believe that 2019 was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we were getting ready for the start of the 2020s. We had so much hope. We're all going to be able to converge in 2020 and celebrate this year and see a lot of concerts and go to live sporting events. Nope. Instead, we have a global pandemic, shuts everything down, and changes our perspective on a lot of things. Few other things have happened in the 2020s so far. It's a very intense decade halfway through it. Um, but let's look back to a fall when there was still a lot of hope in the air. We met in Nashville to celebrate our top albums of the 2010s. And we recorded an episode where we talked through our 5 favorite records of 2019. So with
Mm.
just 5 years in between here, um, what were your favorite records from 2019, and where are they for you at this point in time?
My number 5 was Wise Blood, Titanic Rising, a good record which I haven't listened to in a very long time. Wand, Laughing Matter, talked about that earlier. Still listen to it on occasion, but probably less now that they kind of pissed me off. 3, Elder, the Gold and Silver Sessions. I put that on last week. Number 2, Garcia Peoples, Natural Facts, One Step Behind. Number 1, Vampire Weekend, Father of the Bride. Yeah, I mean, I still like all these albums, but they also make me sad because now I know that COVID was right around the corner, and at this point, Garcia People still has some semblance of a career. Remember that 2019 was kind of peak indie jam. COVID killed indie jam. I mean, like the ultimate indie jam concert was the December 30th Fish after party at LPR, which was Garcia Peoples, Riley Walker and his band, and Chris Forsyth, backed by Garcia People. It's just this like great indie jam show. I think Trey's youngest kid was there. The place was butts to nuts. It was packed. It felt like something was like exciting was going on. And then COVID killed all that. So, I mean, like maybe that's being a little unfair to Garcia Peoples. They put out some pretty damn good records since Natural Facts, but just the touring and ambition and marketing hasn't been there. So this is 2019 was exciting until it wasn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of vibe in that. That Garcia People, the Natural Facts, one step behind. Nothing really says 2019 to me like those two records, especially one step behind. The fact that you had this like jam contained within either side of a record, multiple sections within there, really, really cool stuff. Awesome version from October 2019 that was like 44 minutes long. There was so much hope.
Oh, that was released. That was for New Blue. That was officially released. That's on Bandcamp.
Great stuff.
Yeah, they had that October residency at New Blue. Those were packed.
Yeah, I can't imagine that COVID helped them, and I wish it hadn't affected them the way that it did, because there was a ton of vibe around that band at that point in time. My top five is similar in a lot of ways to yours. Number 5, Wilco's Ode to Joy. Still my last favorite Wilco record. I think that is really exciting and really wild. It reminds me of Ghost is Born. It reminds me of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Just reminds me of everything great that Wilco can do as a band. I saw them on that tour, and it was an outstanding show. Number 4, speaking of 2019's indie jam vibe, Dire Wolves' Grow Towards the Light. Very sick 60s psychedelic laced record that I just couldn't get enough of in the fall of 2019, spring or summer of 2019 as well. Haven't listened to it as much in the last couple of years, but I remember just loving it. 3, Wise Blood's Titanic Rising. I still really like this record. This record did something for me in terms of like making me interested in singer-songwriters from the 70s who have these really lush, beautiful orchestrations behind them, and just really atmospheric sounds and kind of really psychological, lyrical statements. But she put out a record in, I think, 2022 or 2023 that just didn't do anything for me compared to this.
Yeah, it was kind of the same. It was the same, but not as good.
Basically, yeah. Number 2, Chris Forsyth's All Time President, another indie jam shout out, killer record, some killer live shows from him. Kind of need something more. I mean, the work he did on Basic was really, really cool this year, but I kind of want to hear something slightly different. I think that my favorite part of this record, in hindsight, is the drumming of Ryan Jewell. And then number 1, Cass McCombs, Tip of the Sphere. I still listen to this record all the time. I think this record rules. This was, 2019 was that time where like you were listening to Riley Walker tapes. Garcia Peoples was writing indie music that also had this jam aspect. You had someone like Cass McCombs, who has a 9-minute closing track on this record that definitely has the riff from Free in it.
Yep.
There was a lot of like, are we starting to accept the jam world in the indie world? Is this actually happening? It felt really cool. I saw him on this tour. It was an awesome show. I'll listen to every single Cass McCombs record that comes out. No questions asked. He put out an album in 2022 that I liked, didn't love as much as this, but I'm hoping. He kind of tends to go through these waves where he makes a couple records that I'm like a little lukewarm on. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But then he'll make something that just like blows my mind. So I'm excited to see where he goes. That was huge record for me. Was really stoked to hear that, to see him live, and definitely recommend, if you have not listened to that in some years, go and check that out.
That was a number 10, I think, from that year. I like that record a lot.
2019, if you look back at our list, it's like 2017, 2018 we're both in our own little spheres. We have a couple of things that align. 2019 was the most like our music bled together in a lot of ways. There were vibes in the air at that point in time. All right. Moving forward with records that who knows if they will stand the test of the next 5 years. When we look back in 2029 at this list, are we going to be like, what? Who knows? But Dave, tell me your number 2 album of 2024.
The band is called High Viz. The album's called Guided Tour. So this is the album where these like British hardcore kids start listening to Britpop, and it's fucking awesome. They're ostensibly, High Viz is part of the new wave of like British hardcore bands with names like the Chisel and Chubby and the Gang, all of whom happen to be produced by Fucked Up drummer Jonah Falco. Fucked Up being the like Canadian hardcore band, not fucked up like he's fucked up, but you know. Anyway, so yeah, they're a hardcore band, but this one also takes us just as much from the Charlatans, the Stone Roses, My Bloody Valentine, and the first song, even U2. The result is heavy music that intermittently shimmers, all brought home by the front man, the great Graham Sale, and his very Scouse accent. And hey, guitarists from High Viz, I can't recall your name. If you somehow hear this podcast, give me a call because I want to talk about your pedal board. I want to know how you get those shimmering chorus sounds. I want to know how you make your delays sound like the Edge. Just very impressive stuff to me. So I think I heard this band described as, what if the Stone Roses signed to like Fugazi's label, the Stone Roses signed to Discord? Yeah, kind of, that makes sense. When you see them live, the live shows, you get more of the hardcore and less of like the shimmering Britpop. It's kind of just by design. Some of the studio sounds are a bit difficult to create on stage, but you also get the image of like kids like, you know, slam dancing and fucking each other up to like a lot of Britpop sounds. So yeah, very much in my wheelhouse. This is their third album. I think it's the most fully realized album. So Guided Tour by High Viz.
That is your wheelhouse. I tried it and I said, this is a Dave record. And I listened to it all the way through. And then I said, this is a Dave record. And I moved on. We still have those. It's amazing how that happens. All right. I already gave you guys my number 2, which was MJ Lenderman's Manning Fireworks. So we have one last segment before we do our number 1 album. We just can't stop building the tension here. One of the things I think defines us as listeners is our penchant to do deep dives throughout the year. Dave, I'm curious, what were your personal deep dives this year and how did they help you as a listener as you went through 2024?
In 2024, I started buying up guitar pedals. So I did a deep dive into guitar pedal YouTube. And oh my God, that's an endless way of staying up at night and watching YouTube. You type in one guitar pedal, there'll be 15 dudes telling you how to use it. There's the pedal company JHS, their CEO, a guy named Josh Scott. He has an ongoing kind of almost like video blog, which serves as advertising for his pedals, but he also talks about plenty of other pedals and the history of such. And he has his employees play the pedals and try to like recreate songs. You know, it's kind of, that's fascinating to me. You know, just, you can kill a lot of time if you're a recreational guitar player trying to get your guitar to sound a certain way on YouTube. The other record, not so much a deep dive, but I discovered the first album from Lloyd Cole and the Commotions called Rattlesnakes. I think it's from 1984. I listened to the crap out of that record this year. Just jangly, kind of ushered in a wave of jangly Britpop, along with I think the band Aztec Camera is considered part of that. He kind of was a frontman. He reminded me a lot of Jarvis Cocker from Pulp, and kind of really spot on, almost on the nose pop culture references, a bit of a dandy. I know Lloyd Cole still exists, still makes music. I think everyone says his best record was his first record, but yeah, if you like very, very erudite, jangly British pop, Lloyd Cole's Rattlesnakes will certainly rub an itch for you like it did for me. So, yeah.
It was good deep dives. In your guitar pedal work, I can attest getting audio texts of your
Yeah.
experimentations. You're
Yes.
just you're growing as a guitarist. It's good stuff. I had two this year. My year was really heavily taken up by a project I did over on the Helping Friendly podcast, where we made a list of the top 25 fish tours of all time, and then counted them down from an episode by episode standpoint. And it required me to listen to shows and jams from each of these tours. And going into the year, it seemed like it was totally plausible and totally doable. And then it took over my entire life. And I was listening to far more Fish than I had planned to, which was a good thing because I was listening to the best of Fish. But I also spent a lot of the year kind of carving out times to listen to full tours in a way that I'm hoping in 2025 to use that time towards, say, like, one of Miles Davis's 60s tours, digging deeper into, kind of the work of Waylon Jennings, getting deeper into Eno, and just kind of continue to go down personal rabbit holes. But that was a big project for me. The other one, this kind of like came out randomly. Blur put out a Live from Wembley Stadium album back in July. And just looking at the set list, it just kind of hit me like, out of all the big Britpop bands of the 90s, this is the one that has truly lasted in a really significant way. And like Damon Albarn's work with Gorillaz, and the fact that Blur's put out a couple records in recent years that I know that you really liked. It just
The
kind of
Ballad of Darren from last year is a good album.
that was a great
Good
record.
record.
It really kind of blew me away that, like, out of all these bands, they are the one that has kind of lingered. And so I did a chronological listen through of Blur, The Verve, and Oasis in the mid to late summer, which was a nice break from Fish Tour. It was a nice break from new albums. It was a nice break from the HF Pod stuff I was doing. And it was just really cool to hear in succession all these great records that were being made that all had sonic similarities, but also slight differences. And this was all happening kind of at a time when I was starting to discover alternative music. So I was getting hints of what these bands were doing, but also, like, especially the Verve, man, there's some stuff on those records that like just blew my little head apart and made me realize, like, if I had heard this at 12, 13, I don't know what I would have done with myself.
Well, the Verve are unique in that they like use shoegaze in the name of full-throated British rock songs, whereas
Right.
opposed to like a lot of shoegaze stuff is just sheets of guitar with like barely discernible male female vocals. I think certainly the first Verve album could definitely be called a full-on shoegaze album, but it's got songs. And it's they kind of paved the way for like Oasis in some sense. You can kind of draw a straight line from A Storm in Heaven to definitely maybe the first Oasis record, just in terms of like walls of really melodic guitar. But we did a Britpop episode. I forget what it was.
It was back in 2019. It
2019?
was like
Okay.
the fall of 2019 or 2020, sometime a couple of years back, BTP 1.0.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to a ton of it then, but it was kind of, it's one of those like continual blind spots for me. And it was really good to feel like I was getting that much more depth here from the music. So that was enjoyable. Like I said, I'm hoping I do a few more of these in 2025, because this year was just consumed by listening projects that were very much in my comfort zone, and we're all about breaking out here. And speaking of breaking out, we are at our number one albums
90s
of,
Britpop was September 15th, 2020, episode 107.
there it is. Our archivist is sitting right here. He's a Hartford Whalers archivist. He is a guitar pedal archivist, and he's a BTP archivist. What would we do without you?
It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.
Well, speaking of what someone's got to do, we have to tell our audience what our number one albums of 2024 were. how this defined you. This is going to be the record that when you look back in 2034, when we're on like BTP episode 560, live top albums of 2034, and I ask you, what did 2024 mean to you? This is going to be your number one album. What was your number one album of 2024 and why?
Number one album was Good Looks, Lived Here for a While, which was lower on your list. It's kind of like your number one album is lower on my list, and my number one album is lower on your list. So
it's funny how that works.
Yeah. Picture perfect Heartland rock album, albeit with the lead guitarist and Jake Ames, who always sounds like he's auditioned to be in Echo and the Bunnymen. It's a gorgeous marriage of like working class John Mellencampisms with post-punk and shoegaze. You really can have it both ways. According to Apple, first track, If It's Gone, was my single most played song of 2024. These are mid-30s dudes from Austin, Texas, who, as they said on their most recent single, have no plan B. As a result, it's very easy to root from them. That new single is a song called Chase Your Demons Out. I think it may be their single best song. It's kind of their mission statement. The lyric, all my girlfriend's friends keep asking if I got a plan B. Yeah, it's drive to the show tomorrow and repeat for infinity. Who doesn't love that? And the song itself has this like amazing 80s chorus pedal sound that makes it sound like British college rock circa 1987. Like you expect like Ian McCulloch or Peter Murphy to start singing, but instead it's this like dude like a reedy voice from Texas named Tyler Jordan. So, just by virtue of combining excellent Heartland songwriting with a guitar sound that I'm constantly trying to manufacture in my bedroom, this is my favorite album of 2024.
I love this record. This band's coming to Globe Hall on February 8th, I want to say, here in Denver.
You should go.
I'm gonna do it. That's the best venue to see a band like this, and these are kind of the lyrics and the type of songs I just want to like belt out loud with a group of other young men. All right, my number one album. This has only happened a couple of times for me, where I've had a repeat number one artist. So 2014, I had The War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream. 2017, I had The War on Drugs, Deeper Understanding.
Really?
20
I forgot about that.
I did, yeah. 2013, I had Vampire Weekends, Modern Vampires of the City, and 2024, I've got Vampire Weekends, Only God Was Above Us. I was talking with a few friends about this. Like, I've gotten to a point where like music is so academic. I want to hear all these different types of music, all these different styles of music. I listen to it in a very organized manner that like the feeling sometimes is gone. The way that I used to feel when I would like get a record I loved, and that was the only thing I could listen to for months and months and months. I don't experience that as much anymore. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I really like being able to listen to a ton of different types of music and try to understand it on a level beyond just like, this makes me feel good. But at the same time, there is like an importance of having like heart in music. And for me, this is the record to really like hit me in the heart spot in 2024. I'm the same age as these dudes. Every time they put out a record, like you said, it takes them a while, but every time they put out a record, I'm like, oh, that's exactly where I'm at in my life right now. And it hits me really hard. Your points about this album having the familiarity and like the moments where you as a listener felt like, oh, this is a Vampire Weekend record, but then a little bit more kind of like steel metal grating kind of abstract noise in the background. I think specifically of the song Capricorn, which has this like really lush, beautiful chorus, great wordplay, and then this like wall of screeching, just kind of like abrasive sound that adds so much depth to that overall song. Songs like Pravda that really showcase Ezra's guitar playing lyrically are really fascinating. The song Hope, which closes out the record, which I think is just a really, really wild wordplay by them. This band that came about in 2008 really came to the cultural, the mainstay of pop culture and indie rock at that point in time. They're every commercial, right at the same time as Obama's rising, the Obama coalition, and all these millennials are graduating from college and going out into the world. And 15 years later, things are a little bit darker, a lot bit darker, a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging. We're all a little gray around the edges. Got kids, and the idea of hope is a lot different than it was in 2008. So I found this record to be like all their albums. You can throw it on and just be immersed in this world. The songs are written in such a way that you can listen to them at a total surface level and just enjoy what's happening, just enjoy the wordplay, just enjoy the kind of musical cues. But then when you really sit with it, there's just a lot of layers, a lot of depth to them. Really enjoyed the week when this record came out, and they played, like I said earlier, the Eclipse show in Austin, Texas. They played with Goose. They played a really great tour. A lot of good friends of mine saw them on this tour. They played a matinee show at MSG. Just like awesome big year for Vampire Weekend, and really great record. We've gotten 5 albums from them in 15 years. It's a total 5 album perfection run. If it takes 15 years to get to album number 10, I'm willing to put in the wait and put in the time, because they've clearly made it worth our while. So number 1 for me, Vampire Weekend's Only God Was Above Us.
All right. I think we've reached the end of the line at this point. We're about 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's reasonable. I wanted to get under 2.5. Okay.
We told you there'd be a lot. For anyone listening who wants a list of these records, just reach out to us on socials. We'll get in touch with you. We'll send you over a list of what we got. But for everyone else who hung with us today, thank you so much. Hope you guys got some music to dig into here as the holidays are upon us. We are going to be back at some point in 2025, probably early. I think it really depends on what Fish does at MSG, and if they play something worthy of us talking about, which we're all hoping that they do. We will be back. We've got some ideas for some episodes in 2025. If there's anything you want us to talk about, deep dive, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will at least take it into consideration. But Dave, as always, I've enjoyed hanging with you, enjoyed talking with you about music and hearing what really moved you here in 2024. And I hope the same for you.
Unquestionably, Brian, these hours always end up being the highlights of my week. And this week has been no different in that regard. So, yeah, this has been great. I'm looking forward to listening back to it. So also, January 15th will be Taper's Choice with special guests. I haven't got my ticket to that yet. It's at Brooklyn Bowl. I think I'm 95% sure I'm going to go to that show. I got to get a ticket to that. I think Mike Gordon was added to that bill, so that might push tickets along, certainly. But anyway, if you made it this far, we thank you. We thank you for listening in. Come back in 2025, provided, we'll be back in 2025, provided shit doesn't get too weird. And we will, we'll hold hands. We'll sing Kumbaya, because everyone's going to need some Kumbaya in 2025. And go beyond the pond.